Okay. Welcome, everyone, to Thomas's Reading Room. Before, we were working with one of my books, reading the prelude and also the first chapter, Bait for the Enemy. And here, for you that are just looking at this is the cover of a book that I wrote, Trip Across the Pond, a personal Vietnam experience. And we're reading from it, and you're catching the second chapter, which is Fort Ord to Fort Riley. To get on with it. The trip to Monterey took all of an hour and a half. The driver stopped at the security gate. Then he drove inside Fort Ord somewhere and stopped. He opened the bus door and there stood a sergeant. The sergeant began to yell, "Everyone out! Let's go!" We were rushed to a briefing room where we were issued many papers and instructions on how to fill them out. From the briefing room, our group visited the barber shop, then the supply room. At the supply room, we were issued such things as clothing, shoes, some toiletry items, bedroll, dog tags, etc. From the supply room, we were bused to a 2-story barracks, and there we sat not knowing what was going to be our next move. No one in our group could get any information as to our destination. I wondered, like everyone else, were we going to stay here at Fort Ord or what? One day we went to a room, took a battery of tests, and filled out more forms. On one form, it instructed the applicant to name 3 countries that would like to go to during their tour of duty. I named one country, Vietnam, thinking to myself that the opportunity to participate in a conflict did not come every day. There were many benefits to take advantage of, such as combat pay, clothing allowance, higher rank, and perhaps less harassment. When submitting the form to a sergeant, he looked at the country chosen, looked up at me, and told me that I did not have to go. He said, "You can stay here and go to school." After repeating himself a couple of times, I reported that it was okay. I wanted to go. At the barracks, we did odd jobs to keep busy. One day we washed the windows with newspapers. It amazed me that the newspapers did clean the windows. Another day, a soldier was thrown into our group, and we learned that he had been there at Fort Ord 3 weeks. He had gone AWOL, away without leave, twice. However, he had played guitar, harmonica at a club in Monterey, and besides having many girlfriends hanging around, he sang and played damn good. The corporals, too, in charge of the barracks, had him play for them, and they gave him privileges that the rest of us would never think of getting. Once he sat with us soldiers in the barracks and played a few songs that many of us would never forget. One song that got real close to everyone was called "The Eve of Destruction." A soldier came to me one day with a small bag of money and told me that he was representing everyone in the barracks. He went on to say how one of the corporals had informed a few people in our group that his wife was going to college in Southern California, and a guy at the college tried to take advantage of her. The corporal said he wanted to get down there, though he did not have enough money. Sure, and I fell off a garbage truck also. I was not going to go for that one. The soldier with a bag of money became moderately upset with me because I would not chip in, and he seemed cold to me. He took the small bag of money and slid it underneath the door to the corporal's room. A week later, everyone found out that it was a scam. The corporal's wife, should that be what she was going to college all right, right there in Monterey, and living there also. Everyone felt bad, and the one soldier that wanted me to chip in did not have much to say to me. He just stayed away from me. One day, the word came down that everyone, exception of the corporals in the barracks, would be leaving for a place called Fort Riley in the state of Kansas. The group of us piled into a bus with the few belongings that were issued to us and headed for the Monterey airport. The weather was sunny and warm. Arriving at the airport, I observed a 2-propeller airplane waiting to take us away. There was a soldier that played the guitar and about 15 good-looking women fighting to hug him. The sergeants looked and smiled. I think every one of us were smiling, wishing it were us. The airplane was operated by a private concern, and it was relatively old, perhaps 15 or 20 years. The stewardesses were in their 40s and good-looking, though they had settled in the hips, pretty much. Perhaps they were chosen over younger stewardesses to keep us soldiers from getting out of line. The stewardesses treat us good and they maintain themselves well, I thought, especially when we flew over the desert. The captain of the airplane said it would be hot, and he was right, of course. It was a real inconvenience that lasted for a few hours. We were told by the captain that we would arrive at Manhattan, Kansas, 1:30 in the morning. It would be a 6-hour flight. As the airplane approached the runway, I observed lights from vehicles off to the right side of the airstrip. There were buses, military police vehicles with red lights flashing, and a few jeeps. When the airplane stopped, the buses, military police vehicles with their red lights flashing, and an army jeeps came swarming around the airplane. People were shouting, yelling, let's go, get moving, up, move out." I was taken aback, as I had never dreamed of anything so close to this in my entire life as I perceived life. I hustled into a bus, and when it became full, 2 military police vehicles with their red lights flashing escorted us off the airstrip. They escorted us the entire way, approximately 14 miles to Fort Riley, near a town titled Junction City. The night was pitch black. When we arrived, I observed large spotlights attached to a few buildings. Other than that, I could see little of the camp. Soldiers were scurrying about, and a second lieutenant came rushing over to the bus. He yelled for everyone to get out and follow him. It was like waking to a dream, not real. We rushed to what was called a mess hall, and there we ate. It seemed everyone was hungry, though perhaps more so tired. After eating, we were assigned, then marched to our barracks. The barracks held 2 stories, and with the first story having been filled already, we went up to the second story. I found an empty bunk with no bunk above it and laid down. From what I observed, it seemed most of the soldiers there were from the east and southern eastern states. Some of them were up and about talking, and some were lying on bunks, passed out. It seemed I had dropped off to sleep when the lights came on and a sergeant walked the aisle yelling, "Get up!" Everyone eventually got up, made their bunks, dressed, and went outside to get information. A sergeant named Saget, medium build, brown hair, and light blue eyes, perhaps from the southern part of the United States, began filling us in on what we would be doing the next few days. It seemed comical. I liked him, and we became good friends through basic training. Fort Riley had 4 campsites, each approximately 4 miles from the other. There was the main post, Custer Hill, Camp Funston, and where I was, Camp Forsyth. It seemed that part of Fort Riley had been closed down for a long time, then reopened to train the 1st Division, Big Red 1. After training, the 1st Division had moved out by train and airplane to Oakland, California. From Oakland, 4,000 men set sail aboard a United States naval ship en route to Vietnam. Camp Forsyth had been cleaned, painted, and reopened to reactivate the 9th Division. We were given a brief history of the 9th Division Old Reliables and told that we would be called the New Reliables. I had been assigned to the 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry, Charlie Company. The 4th Battalion had 4 companies, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and headquarters, with approximately 127 men in each company. The first several days were contributed to pep talks, propaganda, to get everyone in the groove as needed for the upcoming event. There was not much time to complete the objectives set out, so the sergeants and officers brought from all over the world had their work cut out for them. Of course, they were aware of the opportunity to make higher rank. There was a cadre room at the end of each floor in the barracks where a corporal stayed to supervise us, keep us in line. The corporal upstairs liked me and called me corporal also. He tipped the bottle often and ended in losing rank, 1 stripe. Everyone received shots in the arms, and that horrible booster shot, that long, ugly needle in the buttocks. The injection felt as if 3 pounds of lead had been placed inside me. I was sore to the point where it was difficult to sit for a good week. Before we were allowed into the mess hall to eat, we would form a line and wait our turn to do some pull-ups, then go through some parallel bars. The second lieutenant would inspect us as to our dress, polished belt buckle, and polished shoes. The first week, many of us realized how out of shape we were. However, I doubt that I was ever in shape. The day's activities for the most part were going to classes, physical training, and physical education at the end of each day, Monday through Friday. Saturdays and Sundays were given to cleaning, washing, polishing, studying, and riding home. During the course of each day, if anyone was not up to the standards set out or was goofing around, they would be commanded to do perhaps 20, 50, and even 100 push-ups. The expression usually was, "Get down, soldier, and give me 100. Often I was ordered to get down and do the famous dying cockroach. You had to lay on your back and extend the legs and arms horizontally. After a period in that position, one would find it difficult to move. Because I was so funny in doing it, I never had to stay in that position too long, thankfully. For some reason, being in that position caused most everyone to laugh, and when they did, the second lieutenant went crazy. He would order each of them to get down and give him 100 push-ups. I told those soldiers repeatedly not to laugh, though they would laugh anyway. One day, standing in line before getting into the mess hall, the same second lieutenant came to me and said, "DuGan, you have a dirty belt buckle. Get down and do the dying cockroach." No one ever figured out how to pronounce my last name, DuGan, correctly. I did the dying cockroach, and guess what? That's right. For the umpteenth time, most everyone laughed, and the second lieutenant had each of them doing 100 push-ups. Afterward, the second lieutenant, with a smile of satisfaction across his face, told me that the buckle looked really good. Toward the latter part of basic training came bivouac, where we would be tested on what we had learned. We would qualify at the hand grenade side and rifle range. Tractor trailers hauled us out to an open field with its infestations, and we spent 4 days qualifying. It was exciting, lobbing hand grenades. I managed to qualify there and at the rifle range. Being predominantly left-handed did not work too good in a right-handed army. Remembering back a month when I was to fire the M60 machine gun, I had to fire it right-handed. A white board was the target some 35 yards away, and I never put one bullet into or through that board. Leaving at the conclusion of bivouac, we forced marched 20 miles back to camp. The weather was a scorcher that day, somewhere in the 90s, and the heat played hell with my brain. Sergeant Saget kept saying, "Just over the next hill. We're almost there. It's just over the next hill." We must have walked over 8 or 9 hills, it seemed. Walking into camp, there was one hell of a Charlie horse in my right leg. I could not see how I was going to go the remaining distance, though with great tenacity I did. A short time later came our final test, including the physical test. I passed with no problems. The difference between taking the physical test when I first entered the Army and at the end of the basic training was like night and day. Following the test, we would receive a 30-day leave that was much longed for by everyone. I got a ride to Wichita, then took an airplane to San Francisco, California. A friend picked me up and we went to San Mateo to get my 1963 car that I had stored before going into the Army. After staying and visiting with a few people, I drove to Iowa and visited with family and friends. Returning to Camp Forsyth from the 30-day leave, I had to park my car in Junction City. We were not allowed to have a car at the camp. Almost everyone received their MOS, Military Operating Service, immediately. However, some soldiers had not received theirs, including me. I laid around wondering what I was going to be doing. The temperature was setting a record. Each day was 105 to 109 degrees, and the farmers were losing cattle due to the intense heat. One day I was notified that I was to report to the motor pool to attend driving school. I learned how to drive every vehicle the Army possessed and received a military driver's license. The corporal, who called me a corporal, told me I was chosen to be a radio telephone operator, driver for the company commander, Captain Brenner. Captain Brenner had recently returned from Vietnam, and now he would be making another trip across the pond. One day, as we stood in formation in front of the barracks, he addressed the company. Summing his speech, Captain Brenner made a statement that stayed with me, and I remain grateful to him. He said, "Always look like you know where you're going and what you're going to do when you get there." Somewhere, politics played a part in that coming of events. I was transferred to headquarters and assigned to the motor pool. A couple of days later, and a couple of us were on a bus with a few other soldiers headed for Fort Leonard, Missouri. We would be going to wheel vehicle mechanic school for 7 weeks, then return to Camp Forsyth. Fort Leonard had earned an alias, Little Korea. Many sergeants and some officers did not care for the soldiers that came from the 9th Division. Often they reported there was the United States Army, then there was the 9th Division. So, what if we raised a little ruckus? I'm sure they would have too, should they have been in the same position. After all, we did not have too many days left in the United States, our homeland, and perhaps many of us would not get back once we left. One weekend, a couple of soldiers and I hitchhiked to Junction City and retrieved my car. Finished with schooling, the following weekend, the same couple of soldiers who hitchhiked with me earlier rode back with me to Camp Forsyth. It was much better than riding in a bus. A couple of days and everyone's advanced infantry training was complete. I received my MOS, which was wheel vehicle mechanic. A sergeant by the name of Ashett, who was tall and big, not too much white hair on the head, and wore glasses, was in charge of us at the motor pool. He said, "I've been in the Army more than fucking 20 years, and everything I fucking learned was in the Army." It seemed that every other word he used was fuck or fucking. Some soldier that had gone to wheel vehicle mechanic school were asked by Sergeant Ashett what they did with their diploma. After they informed him, Sergeant Ashett turned to me and said, "What did you do with your fucking diploma, DuGan?" "Sarge, this lady and I were sitting on a couch in the basement of the house. The diploma was pinned on the wall, and her and me was getting drunk. Excuse me, intoxicated. And we started throwing darts at it. Ha, 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 ho, ho, DuGan, you're some kind of fucking nut." "But Sarge, everybody likes a nut, now and then." With a slight grin, a gleam in my eyes, I walked away. A day later, and everyone received a 30-day leave. When we came back, we would get ourselves prepared and leave for Vietnam. At the end of these chapters, I included a letter that my father saved that I wrote from Vietnam. And some of it is legible and some of it I can't even read. But what I can, I will read to you because the tone and prose is 1966. Dear Dad and Mom. Believe it or not, this is the first chance I had to write. I'll write until 15 minutes are up, then I'll go to bed and continue this letter later. I'll start off with, I got to Fort Ord and found out that they were going to ship us to Kansas. So we spent a week there, then we flew to Kansas. It took 6 hours. It was a propeller job. We got to Fort Ord, Kansas about 1:30 Thursday morning. I've been on the run ever since. This morning I got shots and my arms are sore, as is my ass. I got a pretty fair workout today. Tomorrow will be worse. The Army sucks. I belong to the 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry. There is quite a story behind it. Fort Riley is right next to Manhattan, Kansas. It was hotter than hell today. Continue later. First chance. Well, I'll start again. I didn't think I could make it through the day today. They gave me a booster shot the other day and I hardly can walk. We've got to clear the barracks now for inspection tomorrow. Actually, it shouldn't be writing, but I will. And I'll have 8 weeks of boot training, 6 weeks of advanced infantry training. Then when there's some action going somewhere, they'll ship us out. So Vietnam, here I come. That's the The reason why they're training us here. We have some guy from Texas, California, Fort Hood, New Jersey, Virginia, Fort Benning, Georgia. The drill instructors come from all over the world. We're supposed to be special, ha ha. When we get to breakfast, we have to run through the parallel bars. The first time I made it seemed time only 11 out of 13. Third time, 7. Fourth time, 3. I wonder how I'll do tonight. Well, I have to go. Continue later. Here I am again, 5/7/66. I had to get a haircut last night. That took a while. I think I'll sign off and get this letter off to you while I have a chance. Love, Tom. Thank you, folks. And we will go over the 3rd chapter, Train to Open, Troop Carrier to Vietnam. We'll get going with it. Thank you very much for Thomas's Reading Room.